don't know if this device, this phone, captures audio very well. I really hope it does, but just wanted to get some thoughts out. So in Buddhism, there's 5 kleshas, or the 5 poisons, and then there's the 5 luminaries, which are when awareness is added, or a certain level of transparency or purification is either developed or brought forward or brought to attention. And they're not really on the tip of my tongue right now, but what it got me thinking about is 5 things that are really important to me. And I guess 5 wisdoms that I've seen that are very relevant to me, of fairness, equity, equality, trust, and faith. And so then there's another element to each of these that kind of gives it, a little bit more definition. For trust, it's acknowledgement, the ability to acknowledge. For faith, it's goodness. For equity, it's understanding. For equity, it's understanding. And then fairness and equality. It's not coming to mind what like secondary attribute there is that kind of further defines them. And the 5 elements, as they're described, are kind of what are the basis of building temples, manufacturing stone, the spirit, just kind of like everything is controlled by the 5 elements. And in some regards, I believe that. I just don't have, thorough evidence of it. And given the Western view and somewhat of like this symbolic shifts in properties of determinism and causality, elements kind of take on a very different form in the Western cosmology and science. And so I'm just kind of looking at it to see what might be, I guess relevant to this discussion, not just from a translation, like a perspective of translation, but a perspective of, well, this is something that's arising for me regularly when I'm looking at the material world, the spiritual world, relationships, everything. The nature of the conscious and subconscious, or conscious and unconscious. In other schools of thought, it would be gross thought and subtle thought, and the conditioned mind, and then maybe then the unconditioned mind. But then the unconditioned mind is actually mindless. It's no mind. Because if it were to be mind, then it would therefore have a condition. And so it would need to be no mind, which would be surfaceless consciousness. Effectively like seeing through the spirit veil. And so, in the realm of not that, uh, in the realm of light that connects both of those things, let's say, rather than having it be like a division of sorts, as it's all connected by light, anyways. So the 5 luminaries are these wisdoms. Yeah, I guess what's interesting with, and maybe fairness and equality. Maybe equality is some secondary aspect of fairness, or fairness is the secondary aspect of equality. But I was kind of thinking about it as things may not be equal, but they can still be fair. And things may not be fair, but they can still be equal. And that's what gets really interesting, is people being like, oh, well, sometimes life ain't fair. And it's actually, well, what they mean to be saying is probably sometimes life ain't equal. But the equality and fairness are different, I believe. Because I can't treat, maybe if something is lesser or whatever, like I wouldn't treat an ant equally as I would, that's like, to kind of take it out of an emotional realm. I wouldn't treat an ant equally as I would my own car. But I can treat both of them fairly. And so equality isn't maybe directly visible, but like in a subtle sense maybe it is, but equality might not be there, but fairness can still be there. Or it might be there's fairness to a little bit higher degree than there is equality. Just like when you look at a tree, you see green, so you're not seeing the other colors, and when you look at the sky, you see blue. Like, it's just how things might be a little bit more concentrated, but all of those colors still mix in our sense perception. And so, kind of just playing around with that, the quality of well, I don't know, maybe I should describe what I was thinking about with faith. Being in faith is kind of turning our attention towards unimpeding goodness. Trust being the ability to acknowledge whatever's coming up, past, present, future, here, there, other places, just all of it, all states of anything, awareness. And then, what is it? What was the other one? Equity and understanding. The reason why I kind of was thinking about these things is it's like the nature of giving, receiving, giving and taking, offering and taking, or offering and receiving, offering, receiving, giving and taking. the nature of those things are, it's based on a trade. And, whether it's one for one or tit for tat or these kinds of things, if one cannot do a little bit in their trade in terms of actually constituting trustfulness and negotiation, then generosity isn't necessarily generosity because there's no baseline, there's no equity, possibly even not necessarily no loyalty, but no principle upon which loyalty can be gathered. So even more important than loyalty is the principle behind it. And so, I was just kind of thinking about the nature of relationships, the nature of trade, basically just getting along with others. That a lot of times people will they'll want to jump into certain forms of generosity in order to leverage their own perception of their identity or an opinion of themselves or an opinion of others, basically to establish right as in R-I-T-E, and possibly even right as in R-I-G-H-T, what is right, but to establish right and to kind of create the grounds of their experience. But all of these other things are naturally arising before that, and even they're under the ground of it, and they are the ground of it, and they are the thing that is plugging into the ground of it. So they are the ego as well. They make up the ego. But they are, as an element, they are not the ego. But as soon as there is something identifying it, it becomes the ego. And so I feel that people often will kind of become attached to these experiences, these subtle thoughts that they're having about, maybe it's a conceptual framework that they're attached to. Maybe it's, even more subtle than that, or, a subtle feeling sense or something. But all of that aside, there's still those 5 elements that come before it and illuminate the whole process. I don't really even like thinking about it like that, because for me, I just see it all as one anyways. One thing spoken about in different ways. But what kind of became important was, if trade can't be established in even the most simplistic sense, then there really is no value to an interaction. Even no matter how authentic or appearingly authentic, it may not have any value because it's not actually it's not foundation, it's not within the foundation of light. So there's no way of truly coming to like a primordial discernment of what's actually happening. And so for there to be generosity, like a true kind of giving, there needs to be that ability to have trust, have faith, have equity, have equality, and have, what's the other one? Fairness, yeah. And then the all-encompassing way of compassion is evident. And then one can be more generous because now I can be generous with all of my trust. Maybe we only have one potato and I can only give you half. But, now that there's trust, when I have 100 potatoes, I can give you 50. And so it's not necessarily to be built on a promise, but it's, that there's trust enough to hold that generosity. And what's interesting is that trust, I feel, might be the most important, because acknowledgement being acknowledging equity, so acknowledging understanding, acknowledging fairness, acknowledging equality, and maybe where there isn't equality, which is fine, because not acknowledging it is a lot worse than acknowledging it. Not acknowledging inequality is a lot worse than acknowledging inequality. And so that's kind of like, maybe that's non-dual. Maybe that's non-dual right there. Because we just found how what is seemingly dual interacts with other seemingly dual things. And so if we can note the interaction, then clearly it's whatever is in between the interaction is non-dual. And then trust and the acknowledgement of goodness. And I guess, like, if any of those things are out of, out of balance, then you kind of have some issues. And it might not be consciously out of balance. It might be unconsciously out of balance. And I mean, I'm one to talk, but I've just seen it show up so often in relationships with myself and with others, where it's like, and that's why I'm talking about it. That's why I'm putting out some weird rambling video about it, is because it's not something like it's something everyone kind of knows about, but then we kind of just get so many ideas wrapped around it that we don't get back to like the feeling sense of it. We don't get back to like the pre-moralistic, pre-ethical stages, the proto-cultural stages of trust, the proto-cultural stages of all these forms of development. And yeah, so it's just I don't know, it just seems very relevant to me. Um, to kind of look at these things like that. And to kind of, I don't know if this helps. Like there's for me there's an infinite amount of commentary and storytelling that can go with each of these subjects. But really it's just how is it showing up in your life right now? Like, so with generosity, what I was mentioning is like if those five things aren't balanced and in place with generosity, then generosity is utilized and possibly even overutilized as a form of distortion, manipulation, delusion, inversion, um, projection, maybe. And I guess, one thing that I would want to add, just as a reminder, is our attitude, how our attitude affects our behavior. And, not to fake having a good attitude. No, I guess not to fake having a bad attitude. I don't know, like authenticity and sincerity, and good and bad attitude. That might be another video or something. But yeah, just the importance of attitude, the attitude towards ourselves, the attitude towards others, and how different everyone's experience is of attitude, and how in a lot of ways we both need to make more room for people's attitude to show up, but we also need to be willing to acknowledge our own attitude as it shows up. That's why, I put emphasis on holding space with one another, holding space for one another. So that these things can be properly, cognitively sorted out and understood. So hopefully the audio on this is at all decent. Yeah, I might just, I'll just cut it here. But yeah, have a wonderful everything.